Hi there, Chris here with another fresh tip for you all. In this video we are going to continue our look at painting the BladeGuard Veteran Primaris Marine in the Brazen Claws color scheme, and in this video we are going to begin working on some odds and ends of the model, meaning that for, well, the shield here, we're going to finish off the bone and that purity seal. To get us started, we're going to use some Skeleton Horde from Citadel Contrast. This is a really fantastic way of quickly getting a bone effect completed on a model. It doesn't have to be just bone. I mean, it could be like parchments or whatever you want, really. It's your imagination. You can see here I'm applying a fairly generous amount, and I am slowly working it into the little recesses, the eyeballs, the eye sockets, and things of that nature. The big skull in the middle I saved to last. There's a little dollop of paint that was accidentally bumped onto his forehead there. I'll get rid of that once we move on to highlighting, of course, which we will do. So you can see there, once it's dry, we're going to move over to some Screaming Skull. We're also going to use some Lamian Medium. And with this, we're going to slap a little bit onto the palette. We're going to add a drop of medium and give that a thorough mixing until we get a nice, smooth, creamy consistency. And with this, we begin highlighting, and very simply, I just allow most of the paint to gather on the forehead area, around the eyebrows, the cheekbones, the bridge of the nose, as well as down by the teeth. And the little smaller skulls are a little easier to get through, as you just pretty much just have to hit the top of the forehead and come around the eye sockets and cheekbone, get a little bit on the teeth, and you're pretty much done. As you can see there, we have all that bone already laid out. Now we're going to take some White Scar, Citadel Layer, and this is going to be mixed into our Screaming Skull, just to give us a lighter tone. Not too light, it's about a 50-50 kind of mix ratio. It's not quite a 1-to-1, but somewhere around that ballpark. It's just not all the way white is what I was looking for. I didn't want a pure white on there. And with this, basically, we're going to highlight just the top of the skulls and a little bit on the cheekbones. I actually ended up highlighting kind of down to one side of the skull, just for giggles, really, because we did all that non-metallic metal and all that other jazz. Next, we're going to jump over to some Snakebite Leather. This is Citadel Contrast. We're going to use some Contrast Medium, just 2 drops onto the palette. And I'm going to take a generous amount into my brush, which I'm using there as a shade wash brush. Give it a thorough mixing until I see that it's fairly consistent in its appearance. And very carefully, but generously, I'm going to apply this between each of the skulls, as I found that it was a little light in that negative space between the skulls. And so I'm just using some of this Snakebite Leather just to, darken it up, create a little bit more contrast, and, really kind of make those skulls pop. So I pretty much do that to all the skulls all around inside that detail. Next, we're going to jump over to Xandri Dust. Going to slap a little bit onto our palette here, and really quickly we are going to just apply this to the parchment of the purity seal. And with this, we just don't really need all that much, so it's just kind of be pretty quick, just laying this down. Set it aside, allow it to dry. Next, we're going to come over with some Corn Red. Again, we're going to slap a little bit onto the palette. This is for the purity seal itself. This is pretty much what we had done previously on the main body of the model. And if you recall that video, it's pretty much going to be the same thing as what we did in that one. Again, we're working on odds and ends in this one here. I'm going to take a little bit of this Wazdaka Red, it's a fun word to say, and we're going to apply this highlight kind of in the upper corner of the circular area inside the seal, but then on the wax outer edge of the seal, I irregularly place the highlights just kind of, around the outer edge, just, because it's uneven and it's got like that wax look to it. I take a bit of our previous mixture of the Screaming Skull and white, add it to a bit of the Wazdaka Red, just to lighten up the Wazdaka Red a little bit. And with this, I'm just going to apply this as a final highlight. Again, just very lightly catching some of the areas, really just, going for that light, pale, kind of waxy kind of look. Next, we're going to jump over to the Screaming Skull again. Take a little amount there and mix it into the Xandri Dust, and this is going to be our highlight color for our purity seals, or the parchment, I guess, is really what we're technically talking about here. And with this, it's just going to be applied fairly quickly here. I'm just basically applying this highlight over a majority of the area, just leaving a little bit in between the recesses and the folds, just for wherever the shadows may fall. But I'm okay with going with a fairly bright standing here, because again, we're going to hit it with some Egrex Earthshade. This is the regular Citadel Shade Wash variety. This is not the gloss variety, which is another favorite of mine. You can see we got a fairly generous amount on here, and with a damp clean brush, I simply draw the excess off and maneuver the color around on the surface, just so that, pulling it off anywhere where I want it to be bright, but I want to deepen up some of the color in places, and of course around the outer edges of the purity seal itself, just to help frame kind of like a black lining effect kind of thing going on there. Next, we're going to move back over to the main body, and we're going to use Skaven Blight Dinge. This is going to be for the nozzles and exhaust and the ribbing in between the knees and those little techno doodads on the back of his shins. I added a little bit of Lamian Medium to the paint just to thin it out ever so slightly, and very quickly here we're just going to apply this over the little vents. There's little doodads on the side of the backpack as well. There's like little circular things, and then of course the nozzles themselves, and I apply this even on the front side of the nozzles as well, which was a bit of a pain to kind of reach and get to, but with a little bit of patience and a steady hand you can reach those areas as well. If you've left the backpack separate, all the better, but for those of you who are crazy enough to attach them right away, well, we got to maneuver around. Next, we're going to move into some Basilicum Gray. With this, we're basically going to apply this somewhat generously right out of the pot, and we are going to use this like a shade wash, but because it's not all the way black, it does not tint the or change the value of the base coated parts too heavily, unless of course you allow it to really pool up, and then of course it's going to give you really deep tones. But otherwise, with this, we are simply just looking to frame out some of these areas and, of course, create some shadows on some of these details, especially the little rib details. We started off with a gray because I knew I was going to come in with the contrast to knock it down and give it a really dark appearance. I usually like the little ribs in behind the knees and the elbows and things like that. I usually like those really, really dark. I don't know why. Dawnstone with some Lamian Medium. We're going to slap a little bit onto our palette, add a drop of medium to it, give it a good thorough mixing. Of course we can't see it because Space Marine's in the way, but don't worry about it. I think you guys know by now. And with this, we're going to go with a bit of a non-metallic metal look to this whole rigmarole. And with this lighter color, I'm just simply laying it along the edges, allowing the darker gray to remain at the higher points. So basically we're doing this kind of like how we previously did non-metallic metal, where basically, of course, this is a shorthand method, of course, but you build the color up down brighter towards the bottom of the detail. So as you may notice here, you can see I'm laying brighter color at the bottom portion of each of those little details. And of course on the vent, actually I reverse it and do the edge of the nozzle itself. Also turn the brush into a bit of a chisel here to catch the high points of the nozzles. I end up getting a little too much paint in between each of the nozzles, but I really wasn't worried about that because that's an easy fix later on. And with this color, basically, we're going to catch the back of the knees. And here I'm just catching each of the high points of the, what are these details called? These back of the knees. Like, what is that rib detail supposed to be called? I have no idea. It's an undersuit? No, I don't know. It says joints. Whatever it is, we're painting it. Administratum Gray, regular Citadel Layer. Drop a medium. I think actually maybe we dropped 2 drops. Do we turn this into a glaze? I can't remember. No, just 1 drop. And with this, basically we just give it a thorough mix to make sure we're all thoroughly, even with our paint. And again, our finer highlights we apply here, but you can see here, I'm not applying it over the entire perimeter of the detail. And in fact, I'm just catching just the edges and just a little bit on the high point of each of those little nozzles, just to give that illusion of like, it's reflecting, light on a metallic surface. And again, with those nozzles along the side, we continue our highlights along the lower portions of each of those little details. In the back of the knee, I also just do a quick little spot highlight on those areas just to create a little bit of like the impression of a reflection. Again, it's this is a fast you know, painless way of kind of doing a non-metallic metal look on areas without having to go through all the trouble of, you know, really trying to blend them out or anything like that. This is just a quick impression, and, you know, again, we could spend a lot more time refining our gradients of color, but if this is a gaming piece, entirely unnecessary. If you're going for a good tabletop standard, this is definitely the way to go, as it does not take a lot of time to accomplish. We're going to take a little bit of Basilicum Gray, and I'm just going to throw that right into the nozzles as my camera goes out of focus. Perfect. And I'm also going to hit the back of the knees as well, because some of the points I did hit a little bit too much color, and so it, you know, I just wanted that separation. We're going to take some white scar, add it into the Administratum Gray, going for roughly a 1-to-1 type of mixed ratio of color, you know, kind of 50-50. It's not white, it's not Administratum Gray, it's in between. And with this, it's just a very, very tiny, minimal highlight, just the very edges of some areas. And of course, you can see on the nozzle, it's just a little bit of gather on the high points and the interior of the nozzle. On the little nozzles on the back, on the sides of the backpack, it's just right at the bottom corners. I also end up hitting the top edge of, right there, I hit that top edge of that nozzle, and I thought, no, I might as well just continue on with that, because it does add to the non-metallic metal look. And in fact, with non-metallic metals, doing a highlight above as well as below, building the color up, adds to that whole effect and really finishes it off. But there we are. That's part one of our odds and ends. Next, we're going to continue on, and we're going to finish off that back of the shield. And you know what? Maybe we'll do a little bit of OSL or lightning. Maybe OSL and lightning. Who knows? Big thank you to my patrons. Without their support, these videos would not be possible. If considering Patreon support, click the link in the description below. And a huge, huge thank you to everybody who does. Without you guys, this would not be able to continue on. Take care of those brushes, and they will take care of you.